We're all set, so. We're recording it, live stream. All right, so we're gonna get started, with a quick welcome, roll call. Thank you for first out of your busy schedules and, well, this is time of year you're ramping up for the school year and summer in general. Just really to get all the expertise that so yeah, so today we're gonna spend some time mostly as a continuation of starting but just to orient everyone our hope for today. So we have quite a bit to get through. We'll see after today, but we'll see the month, but after dialogue and but before we really get started, welcome introduction, roll call, this big back together and speak faces. We just wanted to take a if you're able to share your name, and then anything else that you want to provide around I'll start and see what Vincent formally wants to support the facility with Nicole. I'm the executive director of Montana. I am very passionate about early learning and just feel very honored to be a part of this group. I got my start in this work at the work started. Really felt it.
Very cool play right now. Like it's like
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because
okay. Yeah.
Don't chew that.
We were big champions around having more opportunities for girls in our state. So one of the people things that does not have preschool or part of Gracie support, so I'm excited that it's forward. And I have a girl but in and out today is Paul Flannan, the executive director of again, helping facilitate as best I can. Really grateful for want to do the big things to land for letting us use the building. Board of Public Ed is very fortunate enough to be able to use this building. We're not
I'm Lori Barron, the very proud superintendent of the Evergreen School District in Tulsa. We are a district for the largest school in the state. We have been operating a kindergarten program for that probably prior to this problem. We have our district state all three places last year. We did the home base, the summer, and the home base. We find a lot of success with the home base. It's very frustrating. We spend a lot of time for not a lot of return. So really hoping to see that improve. Jumpstart, we had a nice return in the classroom. We were really pleased with the two classes, with students for two classes, one for professional, one for not, based on numbers. Same going into this year with math. It's really grateful to be able to have a voice at the table in this, to help shape this for all my
Hello, everyone. I'm a little late, but I'm happy to be here. I am Ben Cox. I'm from the School District. And I forgot the big things like construction and traffic, so sorry about the delay. I'm happy to be here. I oversee our student services department and our early childhood work for the Livingston Public School. Currently, we have two classroom programs for our period. With the programs about we're looking for students to start. But for now, we're just really trying to find teachers. We're excited to get the screen off of the bring some of that while we're the screen and try to
I'm Marissa Graybill, and I was just a math advocate who enjoyed the wonder of mathematics. I stuck my life K-12 mathematics, and also most recently worked at EdReports, which is a company that reviews curriculum, and they are entering the pre-K space, which is really exciting. So really leading into that early numeracy and how it supports in this process. So in my mind, it's just a math advocate.
Yeah. My name is Allison Wilson. I'm an early childhood associate professor at the University of Montana. I'm really faculty for the graduate program, also director Institute for Early Childhood Special Education. That's our lab school, which plays a big role in partnership with the local school district, as well as the public schools. Showing upwards of 9 early literacy programs, and this year it's 12. It's really exciting. So,
And excited to see the things that we made on our side, now that we have a conference on that. We figured out a lot of work that we did. I didn't see how. I'm going to learn. One of the so I think it has 4-year-old. This summer we had a jumpstart program. Most deepest friends that do it. The data is very positive, so it's really on top of that. Really, Anaconda was a recipient of the Montana grant, and one of the things that we wrote the grant was that we wanted to partner with local providers for the daycare. So we're going to the those providers that's all work for them so they can
I'm Doug Rosberg, I'm Title I instructional coach for public schools. I've been in this role for 4 years. Prior to that, I was a first grade teacher. I think my most exciting thing is I'm tied really closely with the START program in Missoula. Last year, we had about 180 students across 3 sites participate. And we had 90% of those students either maintain or grow proficiency from spring measurements to fall, which was astounding and awesome. We were really excited. This year we have about 220 in Jumpstart, and the same growth. In addition, just like Allison said, moving from 9 classrooms to 12 classrooms of literacy. And this fall, I'm really thrilled to see what our assessment looks like. It's having one of those at everybody.
Oh, sure. I'm Rob Watson. Rosberg supporter. Long time. I'm the director of the school district. And I'm part of the committee. But the background, and that was sitting around actually a good center for the little Easter egg sitting here that nobody was really looking at. And we promoted that in earnest, and over the years, I'm proud to say that schools grew their enrollment in exceptional circumstance programs up to over 1,200 kids. And it was just enough to get to the point where it created the pressure necessary to support the development of targeted literacy. Now targeted literacy of tandem with it. And I'm really proud to have been part of what created this necessary to, even if it meant sweeping it aside and replacing it with this, I'm not sure it would have happened if our members had not stepped up and started delivering early childhood education.
To Melissa Lopakos. Want to just introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I am so sorry. When most of you guys are talking, there is almost no sound. I don't know if there's microphones in there that can get turned up or not.
Yeah, we're working on that right now, and I think
Okay.
we'll be able to hear better shortly.
Okay, I was like trying to like lip read, and then I tried hitting captions. I was like, nope, there's nothing. Representative Nicola Kakos from Great Falls area, and sad to report that at 628 was vetoed and did not get the veto override. But so happy that Melissa Romano's bill is going through, and that we're going to be able to still continue some really good work with mathematics.
Thanks, Melissa. Can you hear us now? Is it getting any better?
I can hear you. It kind of varies from person to person. I think I'm wondering, depending on how close you are to the mics, would be my guess.
Okay, I think we're better now. We've switched systems, so I think we're good. Thanks, Andy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sorry I can't be there. We were in Boston yesterday and now in New York, and
Oh.
so lots of fun travels.
Well, thank you for joining us, and just let us know if the sound is weird. Just raise your hand or something. We'll try to fix it, or people just make sure you're talking.
Everyone use your teacher voices.
That's right. All right. I'll turn it over. Is there anyone else?
Nope, we're just gonna do, before I turn it back over to you, we're just gonna do a quick, consensus check on the minutes. Did anyone have any corrections to the minutes from June 2nd or June 12th? They're on page 3 of your packet. All right, without objection, we'll consider those approved. All right, I'll just turn it back over to the second
Our group. Moving into our third section of the agenda. All right, so this is one of two meaty parts of our agenda, but we really want to, again, just dive into our objectives today around identifying what our methodology is going to be around determining how our state can improve proficiency in both literacy and numeracy. So we will be going through some different documents and resources, and again, just really looking to several of you to be able to share how we can think about determining that. But just as a little bit of background and context, we know that we really want to make sure that we're supporting those school districts, many of you and others, and how they can set up a screener that will best support allowing children in for numeracy as well as literacy, both for the Jumpstart program as well as for the classroom-based early literacy and numeracy programs around the state. So when we did the early literacy, it was pretty quick to get to a process when we're talking about methodology around what we would determine, and the science of reading was a pretty easy place to start, and there's a lot of consensus around that. So that was our basis for then going on to determine the screeners for the early learning and preschool through third grade program. We then went through that process of identifying screeners based off of both what was currently being used and inventorying what folks were using in the state, as well as looking at some national resources and figuring out what types of screeners would qualify under those different science of reading areas. And then we developed a crosswalk, which was intended to be really helpful. And then also recognizing that local control is so imperative to our state, that we really recognized also that if school districts were going another route, we just wanted to make sure that they had the framing and reference to see how determinations were made around the methodology in different screeners, but it was not intended to be prescriptive. So we wanted to just provide a little bit of background on how we went through the literacy process, but as we go now into numeracy methodology, we are a bit challenged because we don't have like a science of reading kind of structure, but we do have other ways that we can make some of those methodology determinations. And we have Common Core, we have other ways that we can look in making some of those decisions, but we just wanted to make sure that we have the opportunity today to talk about what those could be, and so we can get to a place of consensus. So before we go into the screeners, we'll start with methodology, and as I mentioned before, a work group met in July to have some initial conversations around this. We have in our packets a lot of great resources, so you can kind of go through those as we're having those conversations, but you'll see some common themes and trends, and really what we're going to be wanting to make decisions about is how broad or specific we want to go. But the most important thing is that we're really thinking about setting up a methodology that has good backing and that we all feel really confident about going into those next steps for how we can have that justification for determining those various screeners as well. Yes, go ahead.
2 questions already.
Yes. Shocker.
1, who was on the work group that met in July? And 2, for clarification, a school district could, I'm not saying they should, a school district could just continue with their early literacy screeners only and still serve in math. Right?
Correct.
I mean, they would,
Yeah.
I mean, this is important that we do this and we
Yeah.
have these other options, but if a district didn't like one of these or didn't have the funding and didn't want to buy one of these, they could still serve in math off qualifying.
If
for
you
literacy.
qualify either, you get
Right,
the
you
whole
qualify, right.
Exactly.
So this is a nice bonus in
Correct.
addition to, but it doesn't have to be separate.
Correct.
And who was on the group that met?
So I had asked Ann Penn, Doug Rosberg, Allison, and Christine and Melissa Romano.
Yep, perfect.
To basically help me understand if there was something similar to the science of reading that we could use as a guide. And it turns out there's not.
Right.
So frankly, we brought them together to tell me there wasn't.
Yeah.
And so I don't
You were
have,
just looking towards some early learning math
Yes.
experts to, hey, what are some good?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
and, yeah, so
And there's not any.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we met to basically go over like, what could I use as a guide? And there really wasn't anything to use as a guide. So I wasn't really able to pull anything together for the group today.
Thanks.
But yes, it was very much intended to just get some of that initial thinking so that we can have resources and start that conversation for today's meeting. All right, is there anything I missed?
I don't think so. I think what we're really hoping for is, for this group to sort of have a broader conversation about, you know, how detailed we want those skills to be. I think if you look at the state standards, you'll see that there's a theme around what each of the skills are. And we can pull those up and we can go through them if folks are interested. And so I think the group just kind of needs to decide, you know, do you leave it up to the screener to then screen the specific skill for each grade level? Or do you want to determine what that skill is at each grade level that you want specifically screened?
Like we did for early literacy,
Yeah.
where we said you need these things in each grade. Is that
Well,
what you mean?
Sort of. For math, for example, if you look at the state standards for math, each grade level, for example, says that students need to know, understand, and be able to do geometry. Every grade says that. So if we just put geometry in every single one, like, are you fine with just putting geometry? And are you going to assume that the assessment covers geometry and will assess the specific skill under geometry for that grade level? And so that is similar in a way to what literacy does. But I'm saying that the skills for math don't necessarily build in the same way like they do for literacy. They're similar. Like they're for each grade level where literacy is built. So.
I felt like we struggled between like making it too vague or making it
Yeah.
incredibly specific.
Which we don't want to do.
No, so it was tricky that way. It's what I felt like coming out of it. It was hard to do that.
I think we have to go with bigger before we go with too specific.
And actually Marie put something together that I actually think would be helpful to look at to see like vague versus specific. And so do you want me to pull that up? See if I can get it all on one page.
Yeah, and just as a refresher, as you're pulling that up too, with the literacy, we had a table, we went through and identified, and then that then translated into how we categorize the screeners as well. So Exactly, I think that's. Whoa. I think that's great. McCall first asked, I'm like, oh, there's nothing like that quite out there.
Well, I asked Maria, I was like, can you put together like a progression of skills? Like we know to exist for literacy, for numeracy, and thank you for doing this, because yeah, you're right, there wasn't anything that existed like this.
Are these the?
But $100.
Are these the cluster titles really, well, I guess, archaic term, cluster titles for each, like, kind of.
Yeah,
But pulling just the priority standards, is that kind of what, or, we don't use the word priority, sorry. The major focus of the grades?
So yeah, she asked me to like break down skill, and I'll be honest, I use my resources and my experts too, to be like, okay, what does the kindergarten standard say? And really break it down, but what does that mean? Because you can say counts on from a given number, but really that's going to verbal counting. And those skills progress through those grade levels. Same thing with subitizing, one of my favorite things to say and teach people. Going from like recognizing 3 objects by that, and then being able to subitize up to 10 based on that. So this is editable and it's on a Google sheet for a reason. But when I was reviewing it and I had Katrina Ankodrem, our new, our math coordinator, also looking at it, she's like, you know, it pretty much nails it, other than the updates we've made with flexibly in the fluency standards, but you really can't tell in a screener if they're gonna flexibly be fluent in their, operation, so. Yeah.
What is subitizing again?
Like
I
you
was
like
an
threw
English
five-
teacher, I'd like
threw-
to put that out there.
Yeah, so if you like if I threw 5 pencils down, then you would be able to tell me that it's 5 without counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Marissa shared a video and I watched it again this morning and it explained this, so we'll share it. The classic Graham Fletcher video.
Yes,
where he
I
puts up
loved
there,
it. Yeah, I was like,
really
that's-
nice 5-minute, just here you go. We can watch it during lunch.
But then-
so this is
Yeah.
a perfect example of like what the basic skill is versus what the skill means for each grade level.
I also want to commend you for at least pulling, again, we know like geometry in most grade levels is not what we call either major work of the grade or priority standards. And I know we don't necessarily phrase that in our standards that way, but thank you for just pulling standards that seem to be what we call the major or
Yeah.
priority, right? And I think that that is what we want to be assessing and not the other components. Oh, yeah. Ooh, here, this is the one that's,
Yeah.
Yeah, so the second tab on here, it's a lot more. So it took all the standards, and so if you look at this first, like row 5 through 20, on the far right side are the standard codes. This is from Title 10, Chapter 63, the ones that were created beforehand. And then it broke it down into, okay, well, this standard, now that I know a lot more about standards, there's actually 5 standards in this one standard. And so it breaks down, okay, what are those skill descriptions? And then even more so down to what are those skills? So oral counting, one-to-one correspondence, cardinality. So it took those domains, overall, the number, sense, and operations, and just broke it down into the skills by codes. And then the same thing along, and these are with the, I believe, use the new coming up adopted standards that you'll see flexibly, there is an indicator of that, to break it down for kindergarten through 2nd grade.
Can I ask a question? This is all outside of my expertise, but what I do know is that depending upon how detailed and complicated you make this, you'll either make it less or more likely that someone will actually engage in it meaningfully. And you will also either, depending upon which way you go here, you'll either make it less likely that someone is declared to be behind a target for reaching proficiency by grade 3, or more likely. I like moderate in the middle, but if I'm looking at this, I want to know, so how many of those does a student want to fail, quote unquote, before you say one and done? He's not going to make trajectory by the 3rd grade, and therefore he's qualified and in. Because I don't care if it's 150 long, if only one is required to get them qualified, but I'm very concerned about 150 long if you gotta come up with 86 before you declare.
But for early literacy, we went with any,
Yeah.
we went with one.
Right,
So I,
right.
yeah,
So-
we
But
go
we
with
may
one.
change that for sure.
Yeah.
So, and for simplicity's sake, the first one looked a lot more easy to digest than the second one. It has support guidance behind your actual measurement. without needing to envelop the entire thing into the content itself, you know? So, I just know that what I hear from people is, wow, they made that, not a year, but wow, they made that difficult for me. How am I supposed to do such and such? My staff have enough challenges right now without having to go through a complete matrix here that's going to, basically tell people to throw up their hands and say, unless the kid is literally completely, obviously not on target the minute they walk through the door, I'm not messing with it. So I think that's the big overall picture, is make it administratively feasible for school districts and easy to use. And leaning toward, what we're trying to do is ensure that if there's a chance that this kid is not gonna be on target, you want him in there so that he or she will be.
Kind of to piggyback on that, so I love, if we toggle back over to the numeracy screening skills one. So if we had something like this, if we could give to districts, what then also would be helpful, at least in my brain for us, would be another column that's like, here's the assessment, the specific assessment, the specific subtest of that assessment that measures that skill. Then you could just go bam, 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 we're giving these 4 assessments, we hit these skills and this gets flagged as this. Something like that would be so easy and tangible.
I think the trouble is that most of the assessments that I see on here are pretty comprehensive. Like, I don't think they're gonna target one of these specific things. They're pretty.
Okay. And I don't wanna feel like as a district, I've gotta give 4 assessments.
No.
I wanna
And
give.
I think I'm leaning
Like
hard on
they-
the scale score.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, because we had that in the other one, that you could qualify based on scale score. Or profit, whatever we called it, yeah. And
I
I feel
know.
like, yeah.
No one has recommended, let's do what's on this agenda. I'm not saying they have.
Yeah.
But when you look at this agenda, the only one that has pre-K is Eastbridge Early Math. There's not any other option for a district that this group has reviewed. I'm not saying we wouldn't or couldn't, but I think about my district, we do Ames Web, I'm set for K3. What am I gonna do for the other ones? And it's my only option if I don't know and I'm not aware of what's out there and I don't wanna spend time doing the research. Are there other options, or is this the only option in America to find out if they can?
And are we going to,
Yeah.
I hope, because I certainly would oppose if we're not, use those as safe harbors and still leave to the individual judgment of the people we already trust to educate these kids, grade them, and progress them to make their own determinations. That same cadence that we use with evaluation, here's 5 that if you use, you've reached the safe harbor, you comply. You are not required to use the safe harbor in order to comply, as long as your evaluation meets the minimum requirements of the.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that
I
was
was also
also
thinking about, like, you know, there's not very many that don't wanna have to use multiple assessments, like Lori said, and so right now we have to use a separate assessment for pre-K than we do the rest because
Yeah.
of just the nature of it, right? And so having one for math would be handy, but as I look at these, you know, broad areas, I'm thinking, well, those of us that are moving towards proficiency base already have assessments created regarding students counting to 20, regarding students supervising, right? Like, those are things that we have already created. That I know that, like, we would have to show proof that, those work, but even if a district could utilize the tools that they already have available, that already addresses this, and if a kid scores a 1 or a 2 or whatever the proficiency scale says, then they qualify for it. Because I mean, we have all this already, like in my particular, and I'm sure others do as well, where they're already created, they're just not normed.
For the districts that don't, could those districts like share
Right.
out? I think a
100%.
lot of us shared learned literacy perhaps, and, you know, I think we would love to model something else constantly. We could just share something too, but a lot of your rural districts out there, big things, we don't know where to start, we don't have anything. So like as much as we can pass that information along, it maintains upon be great, but you can find it sharing that.
You certainly can do that, but the statute requires that it is research-based and,
Well, we have like, I mean, I think every district that is in proficiency based, I'm sure has, you know, like a Moby Math or an IXL or an iStation Early Math or, you know, whatever that they're utilizing. But I guess that's the concern is then are we not gonna be able, so then we would be able to use those assessments because they're not research based, correct?
I mean, I think that's important when we're talking about interpreting data and knowing, like, making claims about the impact of programs, because otherwise I'm not sure how you can really reliably make claims about data if you're not anchoring it in a research-based, evidence-based.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about like a fragile law that we're already working with, we want to keep.
Yeah, but I mean, like, for example, just to throw it on the condos experiment, so proficiency based, we have the assessments, kids have to show evidence. Okay, check the box. They also use IXL to make sure that that informs intervention groups, and we also utilize NWEA. And so like those IXL and NWEA are normed, not pre-K, right? Not for 4-year-olds, but for K up, those things are normed. So like though, I'm just trying to figure out like how to get them to qualify, and then what tool do you utilize to say that they've made growth? Like we would have the data for math in either IXL or NWEA that says from kindergarten to end of 3rd grade, this is the growth that's been made, right? But I think that, I guess the question is like, can you use a different tool to get them qualified versus the tool that you say shows growth, and probably not.
There's language around that specifically, even with early literacy. Right now, I think there's nothing that says that you have to use the same one that you qualify from us.
Technically,
It says to defend and show the evidence of
Yeah.
what you did.
yeah, technically, we, within the statute, we have to identify a screener, but in terms of determining an investment, that is determining growth over time. I mean, that's really up to
That's district.
local schools.
I'll go back to what Lance said too. I think about implementing it in the district that I lead. If this is too hard, I'm just using numeracy and serving them in both. I'm not even gonna care about math. I'm not gonna look at what it is. 99% of my kids who qualify in numeracy need math anyway. We don't make this super easy. I'm not gonna choose to even use this. I'm just gonna take advantage of being able to serve in math.
One of the
So
screeners for early math that is for 4-year-olds specifically, which isn't the agenda, but it's on this little thing, is the My ICTs numeracy.
Say it again.
My ICTs numeracy, and there's a My ICTs literacy that's already on there.
Can you spell my?
It's just little MY. ICTs are individual growth academic indicators.
Thank you. Got it.
We use that early numeracy screener at our lab school. It takes like 6 minutes a kid, and there's 4 areas that they could potentially qualify in. And if you only did one of them, then it would probably take 2 minutes per kid. To be honest, it's real quick. Some districts might already be using the literacy version of that. I know that we do in a package, so it's reasonable.
And similar to what we did in literacy, I mean, we're here to support the council, and so if after you guys determine the skills, we can go through continuing to collect additional screeners, similar to what's on this document and what's in the agenda, and just create another spreadsheet like this and identify the ones that are already under the early literacy. That would also be for numeracy, and we can go through the grade levels too. So we're happy to help get those at least collected so that it's.
I just think there will be less numeracy ones for 4-year-olds. It's just the nature of just the tools and what's more common assessment, but the ones that do exist, I do think are really simple.
And I just want to be super clear, the ones that I added on here are not like any gold standard. They're just ones that people sent me. That like they wanted to make sure that I had from the last meeting. Kentucky has done a ton of research in this area, and so that's why I added those in there. They're great one-pagers. I don't know if you looked at any of the links. So I thought that it was a good like snapshot of what they're doing. I am not promoting any of these by any means. I just added them in there so that you could sort of get an idea of like what some of these screeners look like in a quick like 1 page. We can do whatever we want. Same with the Rhode Island Department of Ed. Their screening guidance, I don't know if anyone pulled that up. That's a great packet. There's tons of really good information in there. The screeners that are provided in there, they've also done a ton of really good research and information on each of those screeners that I think we could use and not recreate the wheel around. So that's why I added all of those in there. Certainly not to
make it seem like you have to use it or you have to use it or anyone else has to use it, rather just so that we had it as a resource.
I think the more options, unless any of these are discredited, include them all.
Yeah.
I mean, there should be as much flexibility for people to find as many safe harbors as the expertise of this group determines are appropriate. That you should have as many paths by which people can make this determination as possible. The safe harbors are where this is gonna be at. Those that decide, none of those, because we got our own little special deal here, are gonna have to defend it, and I'm sure they'll have staff qualified and to do so.
But it would be helpful to me, like I'm going back, I'm comparing to early literacy, obviously. We use Ames Web Plus, we were already using it. It was one of the approved methodologies, Safe Harbor.
Yep.
We didn't have something for the early because Ames Web Plus doesn't go down that low. So we picked something on the Safe Harbor, did some research, and that's what we do. It'd be helpful to know which of these would do the young learners. Because Ames Web Plus is on here, I know, but it doesn't do the young learners. It will help me with Jumpstart. But which of these?
Are you sure it doesn't go down to pre-K? It does not.
It does not. So we're using Early Bird because Ames Web Plus doesn't. So we had to adopt and pay for Early Bird for early literacy. So it'd be helpful on this sheet if we knew specifically which ones are the early, because I'm not worried about the K-3. I mean,
Yeah.
almost every district in the state has something. I want to know which ones do the early.
That's great. We can work on that. Sounds like a good next step.
And then as many as we can get on there, like Lance said, that are quality research-based ones, I think if they meet the standard, we put them on there.
So I guess like to simplify, perhaps to make it more broad, so that districts might be more likely to do this. Like, should we look at the skills and decide like which skills should be priorities, or do we like the skills as they currently are? Like, yeah, I think it's a lot, yeah.
You just
Like,
develop a narrative state that says you can observe these in play, through one-to-one, through a formal assessment. What you're looking for is any of these specific items on which a student falls short.
That's what I would say, and honestly, I just really think that if we just were even to go in and look for early numeracy screeners, you're not gonna find more than 5 probably. So I would just, and they're all gonna touch these in a variety of ways, so I think for efficiency, I would just go that route. It's not.
Go what route?
The route of just like identify as many early numeracy screeners, like start there.
so have the screener guide.
I would, because
Yeah.
there's not very many screeners to begin with, so I.
And whatever those screeners screen, it counts.
Yeah, I mean, we could look at it, and make sure it covers these. I mean, they're going to, it's just, I just think that's gonna be a faster route.
So, okay, I did look at that and, I looked at a Dibbles framework.
There's a Dibbles map.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about for pre-K.
Oh,
There's not
there's a
something-
K one, but
Yeah,
not
but
pre-K.
not for pre-K.
Like I really think yeah, but
Sorry.
so I took the language from literacy and basically just plopped it over for numeracy and just made it all the same. We could literally do whatever you guys want. But I tried to add in here based on the language from the standards. And frankly, I think these are all off a year. So I think this should be K.
Because it's at the end.
Yeah, so I think these are off a year.
I was pulling from Marie's.
And these are more helpful for somebody justifying a tool on their own, right? This is, hey, if you're not gonna use one of the tools we have, make sure your tool does this, right?
Yeah, I almost feel like it's almost more important that this is very clear because we know there's probably only about 5 options out there. Most districts aren't going to pay for that, so they probably do something that's in-house. And so making sure this is just clear enough for, pre-K.
or sorry, 4-year-olds, not K-3, that,
Right,
but just
yeah.
deal with that in a separate way. But if we make that very clear, at least for that first one, just the general outline of what kind of maybe more specificity around that Maria's provided just for that first one. And then that way districts can assess or can justify their own assessment.
Any data from OPI on how many school districts justified their own tool for early literacy? And if they did, were any of them denied?
So there was no mechanism to deny because of how everything was written.
Right, so you're
So we had-
so you're gonna be okay as long as you say you're doing something.
We had about,
So I did it, you can't justify.
But
Right.
Lori, I think
Yeah,
about
if
the
we-
adults have, you had to select, there
Right.
wasn't an option to type in your own.
yeah, there
Say
was
other.
others.
Yeah, other, yeah.
Like,
And I'm just wondering how many districts chose other and were any of them audited and found to not be worthy?
We chose others.
40 chose other, but none were audited to date that we know of.
There was not, a process in place to do that.
Okay.
Yes, very close.
So,
Right.
so I'm just saying, if we do a good job on this, we've covered all districts then, to be able to put other in there.
And that was intentional. We really thought about that when it came to early literacy. We wanted to make sure districts had that choice. They did check the box of assurances, saying that it was evidence-based, it met all the requirements within 20-7-1802-3. But I know, right? But there was no process for auditing.
So I just think if we do a really good job on this, we set people up to be able to say other and explain theirs if they don't want one of the 5 that exist.
So if we kept these categories, like under each one, they're fairly broad, right? It doesn't give like a benchmark, it just says, hey, it's gotta be about county, right? And the assessment tool you use could then determine whether or not that student's at risk, and it only has to be in one area. So I mean, I know it looks like a lot on a page, but in reality, if we just focus on the word that says one of the following, then really districts just have to find something that assesses one thing under each grade level, which I feel like is 100% doable. So I like this language better than the more specific.
I guess my only question there is thinking about what you put together for the simpler page. Seeing geometry coming up in at the end of kindergarten, we know that those standards exist. Are they a priority? Are they major work of the grade? No, obviously we care about them, but it's not the major work of the grade. And so do assessment features need to be assessing all standards, or they just need to be assessing the major work of the grade?
And maybe I am super open to taking some of those off in each of these too. And like, maybe we don't include geometry until they're assessing prior to 2nd grade or something like that. Like, because I think, yeah, maybe they shouldn't understand
I don't know if
geometry.
the tool needs to, because obviously they need to be teaching these things. That's part of our standards, so they should be teaching these things, but do they need to be assessed in this way?
Yeah.
My
The
question.
geometry, they may or may not have number sense, and geometry won't, but that helps, right? Like, we want them to have foundational number sense, which is the whole goal of it, and yeah, geometry and identifying shapes isn't really gonna support that. So just like how we said earlier, I remember, Nell said oral counting measure, or oral, language, it could be your number one thing, because it predicts all the other things. So if we went down to basic number sense, and you could even take the titles of these, like counting skills, numeral knowledge, numerical relations. And then you could look at the other ones for later on, like arithmetic, operations, and story problems. We don't need to know that with preschooler. We just need to know if they can do the other components. Just like we did with like morphology and those pieces with the literacy, we could have that same scaffold as we build from preschool to the third.
So like a document like this.
Yeah.
Okay. So
But like, to play the devil's advocate though, like 100% get taking out geometry and perhaps measurement data, but for some districts that have the space and want to expand, keeping geometry and measurement and data in the options for testing would potentially allow more to qualify into the program.
I think it would, but the intent of the
With
bill
numeracy?
is,
Okay.
yeah, to progress skills in early numeracy to get kids on track. And those kids probably, if I had to guess, are on the upper level and wouldn't
So they wouldn't need it.
Yeah, they wouldn't need that intervention.
So we could just take out geometry, measurement and data, and whatever else doesn't involve number sense, right?
I mean, it hurts my heart to remove those things, of course, because I believe that we should be teaching all the content that's obviously within our standards, and we should be holding that as a foundation. But I am reading like it has to assess at least one of the following
Right.
literacy skills. So again, that does
I didn't read that part until right now. So knowing that they don't have to assess all of those components, right? It's fine to leave it in there, but I wouldn't want a school to arbitrarily make up a, you know, a random problem that assesses shapes or something, right? Knowing that that's not really going to be the thing that should qualify them for numeracy, right? Really, it's the top three things.
These are illustrative examples of areas for assessment.
Yeah.
Use any of them, right? And make your professional determination as to whether there's a likelihood that this child is gonna fail to be on target by the end of third grade. And a deficiency on any one of these areas will qualify.
And whether we list these or not, we need to, I understand, teachers are teaching this stuff.
Yeah, right.
They're not teaching it because we list it.
No.
We're listing it because they teach it, you know? So I think we need to be aware, we're not gonna be changing teachers' practice based on what we put on this.
Right.
We're gonna be making it easier to serve more kids that need early intervention.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna be negatively impacting practice by what we do or don't put on here.
Right.
And I think we need to keep that in mind.
Really quickly, more professional, around like the vertical alignment. What a great refresher to all the educators to recognize that, yes, geometry for a 4-year-old is very different than a geometry for a first grader or a second grader, but that's, I mean, I can't believe how many educators are surprised to learn, even administrators, that like the level of understanding of like math language that's happening in 4-year-olds, even though we're doing literacy. I mean, the math language is used during play and stuff. They were like, wow. I mean, they really were talking about geometry. So just having that there alone would say like, we are doing geometry. You have to say we get it or not.
Really quickly, Melissa has her hand up, so I just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak.
Hi, just from a legislative perspective here, I definitely think that we need to keep all those things on there, and I very much agree that if they, in one area, even one little test, basically they didn't make it on that test, then they qualify. That is very important. But the whole idea behind this, right, is that we have data going forward saying, look, when we intervened early, we can see that these kids are doing better. So that is where I definitely think our screener needs to be open to everything. And I would definitely really would like to see in that that the district submits what they use, so that one, it could be in OPI database and other districts could borrow it. Because like I know from my school district, we have our teacher just created it, but it's amazing. It hits literally everything on here. And it's divided by quarters. It's like by the end of first quarter, they should know this. By the end of second quarter, they should know this. And I think that it would be really beneficial for future legislation to keep this progress going in the right direction, is the more data that we can show that this is working in every little area. So the more options by keeping everything on that list is very important. So, and like a lot of people, like you said, geometry may sound kind of crazy for a 4-year-old, but it's knowing the difference between a circle and a square. One has straight lines and one doesn't. Like that is a skill that you have that starts as a foundation. Like that, these are all, built on foundational things. That starts as, are we in a straight line? And these are things that I think are just really important for future legislation to be more likely to pass, to make sure that we have all of that information. Does that make sense?
So I'll share what is being collected right now, because we have 2 different formats of data collection, just because the tools are what they are. So on Infinite Campus, when a child is, first they have parental consent to be screened, that's indicated. You probably have done this yourself. Then they need to share what areas they were qualified in. So we have it down, that table that we have there. We have them marked if it's phonemic awareness, phonics, whatever that might be. And it might be all of them. And that's just to track exactly what you're saying. So they matter in that, right? Like we're going to track that and we're going to look at that longitudinal. And then it goes on to, they do tell what screener they use by grade level. And like I said, there's a lot that said other. We have the ones that were already approved, and then they have the other option. We don't collect the tool itself. There's no really way to upload that into that format right now. If that's something we'd like a repository, we could work on that. It wouldn't be on Infinite Campus. we would find a different way to do that. Should schools want, I don't think that's something to be like, you have, unless something changes with the language in the law that we have to audit and take all those in and analyze it, that's a lot different. Then on the data collection that we do within Qualtrics, which is just the data collection forms, that's where we were looking for the efficacy of the programs. We were not going, every single child had this score in the screener, this score in the fall, this score in the winter. That was a lot of, like, with everyone using 25 different tools or more, there was no way that you're comparing apples, oranges, and tangerines. Like, it just isn't the same metric. Anyways, so they are showing how many students first qualified, then how many students made growth, and then how many students continue to qualify. We wanted to add that growth in there intentionally because we want to show that the efforts are working toward this. It was not quantitative because of all the different apples and oranges. If you said that they grew 2 over here and 80 over there, they could mean the exact same thing. It just depends on what the tool is. So right now we're working on that legislative report on all that data, and we've got 222 districts giving us completing our data collection. Not all of those offered, but at least we said they had or had not offered. And then how many plan to. We'll talk about home-based more, but we have a much better setup this year. Really excited that our partners stepped up for us. But yeah, that's what that data collection piece looks like. And obviously we don't know if they're proficient in 3rd grade reading yet, because there's a lot of other things. We're talking preschoolers, and we've only had 1 year of programming. So those longitudinal, we're making sure that we track. When they check that box on home-based, classroom-based for Jumpstart in their enrollments, we have that, and we can pull that and disaggregate it later on and connect to their scores later on without saying Johnny did it, making sure we protect our precious little scores.
Sorry, will it also like take into account the fact that, like, you know, space in districts doesn't account for all the 4-year-olds available within the community? So that cohort that you initially report for that 4-year-old year, you're gonna have more kids in kindergarten because you didn't have access to a lot of them.
It's really what you guys have qualifying your own cut scores, and then every district has different cut scores. So it's really like, we could only collect so much to make sense of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out like how you show that kids who were there in preschool made growth by the end of 3rd grade when you didn't have access to them starting in preschool.
Well, we wouldn't have the indicators that they were in programming.
Just
So
in
we would connect
kindergarten.
it to the program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Jumpstart or
classroom
home-based
based
or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And I do think, you know, from the legislative point, that I believe both very important, right? I'm looking at it from a practitioner point. I like what you're saying because there's a lot of freedom and flexibility in there. I don't want you to gather any more than you're gathering. I don't want you gathering tools and trying to compare apples and oranges. That's my job, to compare inside the district how the kids are doing. So I would really like to advocate for less is more and not put any further restrictions. I like what you're saying. I like what you're doing with it. I like what our legislative branch is allowing us to do. I mean, this is huge that we're getting this investment and that there's still respect for professionalism and autonomy inside of a district while there's accountability. I think it's a nice happy medium right now. And so I would encourage us not to put any more restrictions or data collections. We have a method in place. I like what you're doing, and let's not put even more restrictions on the professionalism and autonomy of local control of districts to know, did little Bobby improve? You know, we're checking the box that he's in there. We're gonna be able to see how he was doing in preschool, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. Let us use those measures, because like you said, a 2-point gain for him might be really significant based on the measure we're using, and it might not be an 80-point gain. And so I just want to keep less.
Oh, I definitely do agree with you in that area, because data collection is a lot, along with, you know, while you're still trying to teach a classroom on top of it. I just want to keep as much options on that table of where they're allowed to put that data collection, and definitely please do not send us individual names, because then you're going to make all the parents mad. Like, privacy, very important.
I'm not
Right that.
So then for this one, since it's actually optional that districts even administer a numeracy screener, would it be just checkbox, we did a numeracy screener, and then, or they're just in them?
Yeah, just qualified under either.
But you were saying that for the new literacy, they check which.
Yeah.
which indicator that they did not meet.
Yeah, we're just not there yet with numeracy because we haven't picked the screener, so those are built into the data collection at this point. Yeah.
But I'm thinking even if, when that data collection is available or when that program's running, right, can it just be that they met numeracy, right? It doesn't need to say geometry, counting, like, we don't need to say what components, it could just be they met for numeracy, and I don't know if that's too broad, right? Is that gonna be collecting not enough data, but, and we'll kick ourselves later, but I think it is sounding for just making it easier. At least one
here, right?
Yeah, that's, I'm wondering, could that be done, or do we think that that is just too broad and wouldn't really parallel in the sense of trying to make things as simple as
I
possible?
think at this point, we really wanted to like get enough without getting too much. So they have to qualify in one of those areas that were determined. So they're already collecting that information. So that extra checkbox was just, here's what they did. I think that, like you said, it's up to this group to see how specific we want to go. And we could, if the committee decides we don't need to know that they qualified in phonemic awareness in kindergarten, it would be less data for us to collect, less for districts to do, so.
But I do think that there's something to be said for the level of data that like our legislative partners are going to want. I mean, I think that's something that they've been asking for. And so I know it's more work for people like Lori, but I do think that that is something that would be helpful to collect.
What is that would be? What are you referring to?
The sub area, just like when we're doing.
Yeah, I don't mind, that doesn't bother me at all. Clicking off if Johnny grew in counting, that doesn't bother me.
Because I think that if we could
that's not
show
hard.
that, because I think if we could show that like this specific skill, like X number of kids were like all qualifying because of this skill, I think that could tell us a lot. And I think that would actually be really, really telling to our legislative partners too. And I think the same could be said for math.
But that actually helps the district because
Yeah.
let's say overall that final score in math that is not where it needs to be right now, and I worry about how it judges us. Let's say that math score is poor, okay? It's not a strong score for that student coming out of third grade. Well, if we've got our other measure that shows the growth in counting, and that's what we're looking at, that could be very beneficial to districts to do it by skill, because I can say regardless of what Mass said that we're struggling with implementing right now, I can show progress in these 4 skills. So to me, that is giving data for the purpose of growth, and then if the legislature wants it, have it. OPI wants it, have it. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it so that I can see if that little kid grew. And if you want it, you can have it too. But I think I want it for district purposes, and then y'all do what you want with it.
Whether they met the cut score that's used to measure and determine success or failure or not, the growth is going to be an important element of demonstration. Whatever this kid is on a static basis right now, this is what happened that benefited that student from where they were when they entered to where they are now. And I think very often, present company excluded, legislators get really preoccupied with looking for a night and day change in 5 minutes. Their demand for return on investment is somewhat unrealistic at times. And I think that providing greater context here and nuance in terms of growth versus kind of, particular cut level is going to be critical, or you're going to have people come and say you didn't change the whole world overnight on the basis of a 32% saturation level of the available students across the state that could have participated, and therefore it's gone. And that's what you got to watch out for here is continuing to move the dial, demonstrating to the satisfaction of policymakers that you have moved the dial, and making sure that you're not leaving any advantages that you created on the floor because it didn't meet this arbitrary number that they were looking for.
Right, and like Marie was saying, I mean, having the screeners, and that's what's in the legislation, is to provide just a screening to assess which children would qualify or not as determined by school districts. That is different than saying we're going to implement a kindergarten entry assessment that is universal across every single school district in the state that will then measure progress from the start of the school year to the end of the school year across grades. That's very different than what is in that's in the law.
Yeah, and I'll add that the cut scores are all over the place, like for the same exact tool. And part of that is districts, like it could be a tiny little town like Trigo that has one kid. So they could say, you know, if they take this and they miss one question, they're in. And it could be another one like Missoula. I know that you guys had to really look at like
It's
your
like the
summer.
10th percentile
Exactly.
jumpstart.
Where some it's like 85th or 90th percentile. So
For the-
it's,
For the preoccupation with NAEP scores, when there's 6 school districts in Montana taking.
Different conversation.
Yes.
Always my district. I'm like, I think we all, we're 2 and 6.
More than
6 school districts according to Robin Clausen at OPI. I think he knows what he's talking
For
about.
last year, it was only 6 school districts.
Yeah.
last year was a different year. They were piloting some things, but it's more than 6 this upcoming year.
Okay, so,
I go to Robin for expertise on these issues. That's what he's talking.
okay, yeah, so for the purposes, yeah, let's identify and just make sure that we all feel really good about the skills so that we can then as a next step go and develop a matrix like this. And then from here, we'll be able to go through and crosswalk with the, 5 screeners, however many, identify numeracy for both 4-year-olds and then from K to 3rd. Yeah. And then, so that will be kind of the next step. So this is really the first step. We just have to get solid about what skills we are identifying. And then we can go through and identify, how restrictive
So
or not.
before we jump in that, I hear you guys, I did change this, cause like I said, I'm fairly certain I had 4-year-olds and it was supposed to be for kindergarten. So I did change this, cause it's the prior to, I had to back it up. But I hear you saying that there's not many assessments for 4-year-olds for math, so maybe let's circle back to that one. Cause I kind of like Lance's idea about potentially doing some kind of narrative for this one. I don't know what that means for some kind of cut score or assessment, or I'm not sure, but let's come back to that. But I like the idea of potentially doing something different, especially if it's
Instead of that. Or in addition to that.
for 4-year-olds, or
Just
maybe
for-
like a
Okay,
narrative.
just for the 4-year-olds.
Maybe
All the
something
others.
that says like a
Yeah.
developmentally appropriate, norm-based assessment, that whatever.
That
Lance
that
might
like
have an idea.
follow us in the.
Can I just read off? It's nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Just stream of consciousness. For the purposes of assessing qualifications for a targeted intervention program for math, I'm speaking up in case Representative Nicola Congress. Okay, let me start over. For the purposes of assessing qualifications for a targeted intervention program for math in the 4-year-old classroom program, the following are examples of skills that can be assessed for purposes of determining qualification. Evaluating math proficiency in preschool includes assessing, I use a different term than preschool. It includes assessing foundational skills such as number recognition, counting, comprehension of basic shapes and patterns. This evaluation can be carried out through a combination of informal observations during play, structured activities, or more formal assessments like standardized tests or focused one-on-one interactions. The objective of the assessment is to determine whether the student is above, at, or below a developmental trajectory leading to reading or math proficiency by the end of 3rd grade. I just copied that right back out of the bill. The evaluation aims to identify each child's strengths and areas that require support, allowing for timely interventions to enhance their mathematical development and overall learning outcomes. Obviously, we need to massage that, but conceptually, relaxing the specificity and the complexity of the assessment when we know we're kind of out on our own anyways. There are no safe harbors. Maybe there's only one. That relaxing this just a bit, but still pointing and aligning to maybe that first chart that you guys came up with. I think it would do it. I think people would understand it, be able to say, oh, I've got there's different ways I can get here. I need to identify if there's any of these areas that are going to bring them up short. And if they do, then that is defined in the bill as likely leading to the developmental trajectory of proficiency by the end of the 3rd grade.
So Lance, if everybody agreed to a cleaned up version of that, would that be safe for kids going into the 4-year-old or 5-year-old? The standardized assessment could be visually watching them play.
Yeah.
So that's
That work, but
Yes,
screen.
right, but I just wanted to clarify, it could be
space.
Right, that's the only reason I wonder. I mean, I'm all for that because I like the flexibility for my district. I'm just
But I
wondering.
mean, there might be evidence-based observation tools, not really though. I'm not trying to like make it harder to qualify. I just think this conversation is interesting because that was quite the opposite for literacy. I mean, and I would have said that would have been super appropriate for literacy as well.
I did look at the MyICDs, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
The measures on that, which I'm guessing are similar to the FAST pre-K, are oral counting, number name, quantity comparison, one-to-one correspondence, which actually goes
Yeah,
right with.
yeah. I mean, those are general, yeah.
So maybe we don't have, maybe it's easier just to list out the 3 or 4 measures on the screening tools.
Tools
Don't
don't
exist. If those.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, and those also align with kind of the buckets of general
Yeah.
standards and across a variety of whole child assessments.
Yeah, and those were the buckets that you said, like those like two
Yeah.
things that you said there, was like there, and then we might add that
Yeah.
third one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that makes sense for this. Sorry, I know you didn't want to. We did, right back in.
The language in parentheses is just how we label it in standard.
Yeah.
So that's why I did that, just to
I think that's helpful.
put the other language came from like what they call it in like the assessment world. So I didn't know what we wanted to call it here. I don't really care because it means nothing to me either way, but
I would caution the standard one just because it is changing a little bit. I just want to make sure our domain titles are the same I don't remember if they're the same for K5 right now. Cause that's like what those titles are. And so I want to make sure that those standards, like as long as it's the 2026 version, we still have those titles, I would want to make sure.
So
yeah,
are there skill, like from the inventory or what you put up free, like are there skills that would fall under the prior to the 4-year-old?
Would I pull that back up?
We want to, like, it's almost exactly what you did.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if it makes sense for this group to determine, do you want to list those in there so then we can crosswalk?
Quantity comparison.
Okay.
One course,
And there it is.
Yeah. Those are all like, oral counting, one-to-one counting.
So if we went with some version of what Lance read and it included observation, you would have to specifically say, I observed counting, so that you can mark that domain and watch it for growth when they're in 3rd grade.
You might facilitate as you're observing.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, the research basis is, can the kid do this?
Right.
And if you say, what is that? And they can't say what it is, and it's a square, that is in fact research based.
But my point would be
I don't.
that
I would
allowing,
very
if
much
we
disagree.
did that, my point would be if we go into the OPI database for the legislative data collection, that would not be the reason I'm doing it, but you can have it too, would be to say the kid could not do geometry, couldn't tell me if it's a circle or a square. Then when I'm in 3rd grade, I see, can the kid tell me if it's a circle or a square, and I can see the growth? I mean, that's how we would mark growth, is my point, off a non-tool. I know that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Like,
That's such a joke. I'm sorry.
It's
That's
building the
crazy.
skill,
I mean, I understand like what you're getting at, but like.
I'm just trying to understand what you would want from a district.
By then that'd be irrelevant, because it wouldn't meet the requirements of the 3rd grade.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how you would determine growth off of observation. That's all what I'm trying to.
I think what I think,
Right.
if you were, so what I would
Totally
say is
fair,
that
yeah.
there is, and there are tools like this that exist, maybe not necessarily for math specifically, but for whole child assessments, where you can administer them in an authentic setting, and that might be in a play-based environment, and that's completely fine. A screening tool or an assessment tool doesn't have to necessarily be this one-on-one pull-out in this room. But the tool itself is designed for that environment. It's not just, I go in and I say, count to 10 right now. And if they can't do it, it's maybe not because they can't count to 10. It's probably because they don't know me, or there's something's happening, or what, like that's not research based. So I think the context of implementation is up to the way that the tool is developed. And so if we stick with picking from established tools, we're fine in that way.
So I was thinking of like, the teaching strategies goals.
Yeah, I have that
one,
pulled up right now.
right, cause that's the
Yeah.
observation one,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So like, and that's research based.
Yeah.
So like that,
It's a continuum. It
Is
also
that-
goes with, I was looking at what Marie has up here and I
Right.
rolled through the mathematics
Color.
component and that whole area aligns with what.
Do you need a new column?
What's up?
Do you need a new column so you can talk about the specific circumstance in which this skill has to be assessed?
No, I would say that that's based on the tool. So we select the tool and the guidance of the tool creator tells you when and how it should be administered.
But what am I missing here? Because I thought we started this discussion with identifying that there really is no methodology for four-year-old programming, and it's basically gonna be down to the one that does it.
No, there are some. There's a handful. There's just not as many as
I
later.
just haven't found them.
No, we have,
We have them.
like, we have about 4 or 5 right now. Yeah, there's,
But they're not on this list.
And this is
Well,
just,
we- yeah, we have a-
just the, what Kentucky has on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've added, there's more.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're talking, like, when we did I'll pass this around too, but when we identify the skills, then we'll go through the whole inventory and look at all the research that's out there, make sure the advisory has input, and we'll identify the types of screeners that measure for those various skills as a screening tool, so that they're evidence-based development appropriate.
We add other resources then too. Training tools.
This is not like just the resources. This is just what people send ideas.
There's another sheet I included though that has a list of all this.
yeah, this thing. Yeah.
That everybody
Marked
should
up,
have.
Yeah, this, I think it's in the packet.
Yeah.
But
It was not-
It was not marked.
It was not.
We just,
Oh, okay, yeah,
That's fine. Can you tell us which ones
The
on
ones
that?
I circled are my IDs, but I wrote math next to it because they have a literacy one too.
Okay.
Learning without tears is maybe iffy. I just looked that up. It's just like a downloadable worksheet. So I would actually say no to that. The preschool early numeracy screener, that research connections preschool numeracy screener. And then that, it looks like Bridge early math has a pre-K, which I wasn't familiar with.
So early bird is
Start
not,
early literacy is pre-K.
early
No,
bird
but
is,
we're talking about math.
Oh,
Yeah.
but
Which is
it,
fine.
it does numeracy as part of it.
Oh, it has numeracy in it.
which one are you saying?
Star.
The STAR, well, I forget what it's called,
Oh, it's,
but the STAR one is
Well, it
both
says STAR
comprehensive, it's
math.
literacy and
okay.
not only starts in second grade.
Okay.
When you're,
This is K. But whatever, okay.
Early
there
bird
is
that-
one for STAR.
I thought there was one inside early bird. Is there not a
I don't
numeracy?
think there is.
No?
You've been doing that, I don't know where.
We do it for literacy
Same,
right
but I don't
now.
know where the numeracy piece would be.
It could, I don't know. Yeah, they change.
I'm not aware of that.
But yeah, so.
I think that's what would be super helpful. If we could see what are the tools that do the younger learners and what do they assess?
And the tools that do both literacy and numeracy for
It should be
separate.
one tool.
Yeah, we can. I feel like that, I mean, we have pulled up right now, like the fourth, like in one of the very few, or early, we're talking about 4-year-old tools, there's lists of 4 components, and then seeing how it connects directly to what we have here. And we could potentially just have those as our 4 categories. And then knowing that K would fit would be different, so, and it would fit, so, and I think it also, if it's this, it fits what you kind of already had outlined too, Michelle. So I feel like having, maybe could we list those 4 and have those as like a draft, so that it's that in between. That, I think you had like, it was like one, but, yes. Oral
counting, number
counting.
naming, quantity comparison, and one-to-one.
Say what, so sorry, those again? Yeah.
Oral counting, number naming.
Is this for 4-year-olds?
Yes.
Oral counting.
Number naming. Quantity comparison. And one-to-one correspondence.
And where are you pulling that from?
That's from the 4 categories of my IDs.
And then I wanted to name the, you read off, what was the last, I wanna make sure that's.
That was
It was the same thing.
Yep, that was it. Yeah.
And that's just an example from one assessment.
Yeah, and so I like,
Those are gonna be the things.
Broad categories across.
and I think this gets to the point that we are, well, at least the point I've been trying to make, because like, it's not, we're not checking for the geometry, although we know those standards are presented in preschool, like, that's like, these are the things we wanna be looking for initially for students. And does it connect, do we feel like it covers it enough to what you just said for the column C?
No.
Like, you know what I mean, you've listed in more detail, but I wanna make sure that those 4 categories
Yeah.
like cover what you're thinking for
Like that call. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, because numerical relations would be the number comparison or quantity discrimination, depending on what tool you use, set comparisons, yeah. One-to-one, Oro County number name, yep.
Yeah, it all.
Because then I think this tool, this could be a resource to look to afterwards. So if you are creating your own screener, you could potentially use that like actual column to help you create something. But I wanted to make sure that those 4 things really embody what you know are in the standards.
Yeah, I mean, there's more in here because it also stretches K2.
Okay.
So, and some of them are duplicated on the left-hand side, like the one-to-one correspondence, and different components, but again, you could just take numeral knowledge, numerical relations, which is when you're looking at that quantity discrimination and counting skills, especially at the pre-K 1. And I know like we started adding comprehension in, I want to say it's second
This
grade.
is star.
For someone probably knows better than I, so you could, that's where you could also bring in like story problems, number combinations, construction, decomposition, those kinds of things, when you get to that as additional areas, because maybe they mastered all those early numeracy components, but now they're not showing conceptual understanding of the different operations.
Okay, so just so, in terms of next steps, so are we, is the advisory council agreeing that the skills are reflective of this list? Or can you just help clarify, make sure that we're capturing this? Okay, so we're going to include these skills that are on this document. And then from here, we can go through and identify by age and grade level what will be shaded or assessed for. So then we can look at screeners.
Yep.
Okay, is that right?
But I think that this current document may have more than what actually needs to be listed in statute.
Do we so like in column B?
One is like,
If they're examples rather than mandated checks, you don't want to cut this list.
That's what I'm wondering, like, do we want all the skills that are in B?
I think that like, honestly, like when I'm looking at some of all the skills, like underneath accounting skills, that would get collapsed under the 4 things that we just said are broader umbrellas, and these just go into more, so it's,
Okay.
I think it simplifies the document, but it doesn't exclude qualifications.
Yes,
Okay, so you could qualify under any of these skills.
under those 4.
it's a big bold.
Yeah,
Under
I
the-
agree.
So if we have consensus among some of the experts in here, just do it. Do it now. You know, I mean.
Yeah, and I
we
guess
gotta-
that's
we gotta
kind
get
of-
This thing going.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like, not that I don't want to go through every single one of these with all of you. What I could do is like, I could work with some of the folks and go through like what we would consider to be the power sort of standards and really build on each of these like we did with the ones before. I think that would make sense, and I could bring this back to you for the next meeting.
Better use of time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I certainly am happy to let you all continue to talk about this as you were trying to, so I don't.
I do
I'm fine
feel
with
like
that.
you getting with the early learning math experts, which I am not, right? I'm worried about practice and implementation at the district level. I think it's a good use of time to take the people in the room who have those skills.
I really like what
Yeah.
Marie's highlighted on.
Yeah,
here. I think
exactly.
So that's what we'll see.
And I do think it's important though, like Lance said, to list as many as we can so that it opens up the opportunity for more students to be served. We don't want to do an exclusive list, you know?
Yeah.
So that would be my only contribution to the content piece is if a kid can't do any one of these things, he or she qualifies.
Yeah. Okay, and I think Allison makes a good point though too, like when you look up here, there are a lot of skills that go under each of these too, though. So like when you're assessing one of these shaded skills, there are a lot of things underneath them, and so I wouldn't think of it as exclusive either, so.
Good.
Oh, it is.
And I think that is kind of why this conversation is hard, because there are a lot of ways that we could go about this to make it exclusive, and I think we're doing the right thing by really keeping it a little more open and broad.
to allow you all to decide like what assessment you
Yeah.
use, said how narrow you want to go as a district. That will be up to all of you.
Yeah.
Based on the assessment that you choose.
Yeah.
I think that, and then having the list of approved tools or suggested approved tools for the group will be most helpful for the
Yeah.
practitioner.
Great. Okay, so do we all feel good about our next steps? We'll reconvene the work group. We'll make sure that all the skills that we want to make sure are listed, and then we'll go through a process using the screeners that have been identified to identify what skills are being assessed within each of those screeners, and then we'll bring that back to the group at the end of the month. Is there anything else?
This, my question goes back to data, not this year, but in 2 years, right, then that would be the information that you're collecting, right? You'd say oral they didn't meet oral counts, they went to correspondence.
Yeah.
Number, like, and you indicate which one, they say they met for numeracy and then you say.
Although I do wonder, I should look into this more before I ask the question, but I'll go back to my really weak example of geometry. So if I mark for early numeracy, going into 4-year-old program, that was their gap. And that's not gonna be on the thing in 3rd grade. So how are you gonna determine growth?
Their proficiency scores,
Their-
data sets.
Which probably not the time to argue against that, but yeah, since, yeah.
What about the, like, I know you guys are gonna get a group together for the early, numeracy part, but like, what about, would you also need help with like the K3 stuff? Cause we could spend that time now just going through that, cause I feel like most of us are comfortable with the K3.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cause I
Need to
do-
make sure we have the right assessment.
Yeah, cause I
The
feel
right
like,
skills.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can do that now.
Okay.
Is that all right?
So then we would have 2 different sets like we did for early literacy. We'd have the early learners and we'd have the K-3 learners.
Yeah, but at least it
Yeah.
would give us like time to fill today also,
Yeah.
and less for you guys to do on your own.
That sounds great. If
It seems like this Rhode Island document has done a ton of that already, if we look at that one.
At some point, we should at least contemplate, I'm not sure that we do it in terms of this standard, but just conceptually for you early educators. Carlin's bill, which now provides funding for aggregate hours of instruction provided to 3-year-olds who are on an IEP. Those children may very well get their aggregate hours of instruction in an early literacy or numeracy program, in part, that's going to generate A and B funding, very comparable to what's being generated on the 4-year-old program. So, there's a couple of things that opened up when Representative Carlin did that, is that, first of all, it puts down to 3-year-olds on the same par as K and upward for purposes of IDEA. That's not just the A and B funding, but it's also the state and federal special ed payments, as well as access to the tuition levy to bridge the gap between overall funding and overall costs. So I think you might increasingly see, I know of at least one district that called me the other day about it, that they see this as, well, this is where I'm going to provide that education and generate the perfunctory A and B necessary to offset some of the costs that I'm providing for the student under the IEP, both in and outside of the classroom. So you're talking about the possibility of either an integration into the existing program or another unit of it that may be customized to meet kids on IEPs. Just something that we need to.
But Lance, though, like, that 3-year-old could then not be enrolled in the early lit program when they're 4, because they can only get 1 year of early lit.
They could be in the early lit program when they're age 4. So Carlin's bill just lowers that age A and B down to 3 for enrollment in a school of the district for purposes of whatever the IEP calls for. So the IEP is king there. And if the IEP incorporated integration into a targeted intervention program, the student would be qualified to generate A and B.
I thought they could only get 1 year of the 4 program.
When you're this program, no, they're going to get their 3-year-old program is going to be IEP driven. their 4-year-old
But are
program.
you saying, sorry, Lance, are you saying that the 3-year-old, depending on the individual situation, could potentially be served in the early literacy, early numeracy program?
Yeah.
So then they would potentially,
The
if
I-
they qualify when they're 4, be served in that 4-year-old program for 2 years in a row.
Yes.
Mhm.
The IEP is gonna drive it.
Good to know. That is not something I had considered, so that's cool. Thank you, man.
I call it the way.
Okay. Well, that is the way to.
Standardizing what you currently do for a 5-year down to a 3-year-old level under Carly's bill.
Well, I mean, I think I think we're kind of doing that, but we're not serving them in the early literacy classrooms, we're servicing them in the 3. So we get A and B for them then if they qualify, they transfer into the early literacy numeracy program. So we just aren't doing it in the same, like age program, right? So the 3s aren't going to the 4 room, the 3s are just by themselves, so. Got it.
Our students go over into the 4s, you're just like.
Yeah, right, like in your stuff,
For sure.
yeah,
But they're not on the books.
right, 100% program, right.
Once they do the Pele screener and then film that next year.
Right.
That 4-year-old program.
Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah.
Keeps it kind of clean, I guess.
Okay, well, for the next, thank you, that's helpful, because I think there's some nuances to think about these.
Yeah.
For the purposes of the next 30 minutes until lunch, I love the idea of just going through, if this is where everyone wants to go, and just identifying the skills. So we have that information. So where,
Like what page is that?
let's just go through each grade level then. Okay, so we're good on the 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Prior to 4-year. Okay, so now we'll move into the assessment prior to kindergarten. I feel more comfortable like going from the standards, like title headings there, right? Like it's kind of that super broad and it's less specific, but having this guidance in the way, but I think that would be like, and it seems like that's kind of what literacy did me.
Yeah, so.
And if the Rhode Island one too, is there, I mean, there is slightly different, like we could leave in superstition. Supervising, as like its own category, we could do that, that is clearly not a category in the standards, but like because I'm seeing that that's the only difference I see there, do we like that more specific, or is it okay to have it as a very broad that's just listed in the current standards?
Love the broad.
You don't have to do that, but broad.
Are you guys looking at the new standards?
I would like to.
I mean, you can, frankly, we didn't do a lot with K-8 in the new standards.
So we're
and so,
okay.
Yeah, there's not a lot of changes there.
There's a little in K1 too, but it's mostly time and money. And we're just gonna start going through and identifying skills for each. And I like advocating for instead of more specific, like things having it just as a broad, maybe standard, the cluster title or however, like the grouping title there. The counting and cardinality as the first one for kindergarten, that makes sense. So, okay, so should we go back, look at that Excel? Yeah, I think the Excel that was like more specific, because that person was like trying to like make the progression, which is like very, very helpful for like an educator. But I was just thinking for like the interest of like I think what McCall drafted is pretty much those cluster titles right now. And I don't think is that too broad, I would also just say like, we could just do that. Okay, so go back to what is drafted.
You got it.
And then just make sure it corresponds to the standard. Okay. Or the updated standards. They're not that big. They're the same thing. Yeah. And in our crosswalk, you can see what actually changed. I would, yeah. 3 through 8, there's no correlated concept. But K2 is kind of like. So I think those are the 4 categories listed, or 5 categories listed in the standards for kindergarten, or the domains, shall we? And so I'm wondering, do we just keep those 4 domains? But I think there's a couple things we have to tweak, because we're a little more specific in some grade levels than what is the domain title. I don't know how, but some folks are advocating for more specific and more.
I want the most freedom at all. I want the most guidance,
Yeah.
most freedom.
So I think
Okay,
we should pick like the power one.
Yeah.
And build from there. Like, what are the most important? Give us 4
ish. Go from there. 4 or 5.
And you've got the power ones listed already, or document, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think I was checking to make sure the titles are the same. I mean, they're slightly different, like, so comparison, right, it's about operations and algebraic thinking. Now,
Yeah, I'll call it
that's-
whatever you want.
Yeah, but that listing, like, operations algebraic thinking for like kindergarten screener, I mean, that's so broad, right? But as long as the assessment does something in that nature, then we're good. Right? Or do you prefer to have it more skill-based instead of having it?
Domain-based.
Yeah.
That's what we did with, literacy, because basically everything we listed were the foundational literacy standards, not necessarily the comprehension, the writing and other pieces. So skill-based seems to make more sense.
Okay.
And then I think then that's the Excel sheet that you have there is like more of the skill-based, so maybe it is just highlighting those priority ones, like, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make us go back and.
No, it's okay.
This is, yeah.
Part of the process. Okay, so we do want to go back to the Excel. Should we start there and then
Can
we'll
you
just
scroll up before you
highlight?
do that? I want to see what that, the language.
So
you know how
this
we-
is, yeah, so I probably should have explained this. So this is the rules that exist now that you all did earlier this year. We're obviously going to basically be striking it immediately. But this is what exists right now for this year. So we'll be striking, and I basically just copy and pasted the literacy rule as we did last year because I think mimicking that makes a lot of sense. It's super clear for school districts. I think if you're a district that's doing this for literacy, we want to make it really clear and understandable. And so I just basically copied the same thing over. I took out some of the language that is no longer necessary given the passage of House Bill 338, and tried to generalize it as much as possible. So that's what the top is here.
Yeah, I was looking for that last sentence.
Mhm.
Assess at least one. So as long as
Yep.
it's just one,
And
there's
that-
still that flexibility.
Yeah, so it's the same as the literacy. You want to go back to the,
Back to the Excel, and then we'll go through and we'll highlight.
Marie, are you willing to share that with us? Absolutely. I would love for you to grab our email list. I just want.
I'll
So
share,
long as-
yeah, I'll share
Okay.
all the things after, because it said
I know.
there were a few different things floating around.
That was a great idea to just use the work we did in the literacy because we wordsmithed that to death.
It looks great, it's perfect. Good job.
Now
Yeah.
it's almost on it, let's use it, like.
Our Marie makes charge.
Lance, I think you had like 12 different iterations of that, so thanks for that.
That's great.
And then do proficiency standards for all.
On my side job.
We have.
Okay, so do we want to go through by each grade level, or do you, what's the column B?
So I think if it's prior to, isn't this the,
Yeah, this.
you have to go backtrack, right?
So it's like prior to
Yeah,
four,
it's
prior
like-
to K.
Count to 100 is the end of the year kindergarten expectation.
Yeah,
Prior to
So we could look at preschool.
Yeah.
Yeah, preschool is the prior to K.
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Again, we're
We
looking
need
at
a new
the
column.
skill, which are kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but I just, it is hard to remember that that's how you have to.
Yep. So I could duplicate that column that we have on the left, that we highlighted the ones for pre-K and then, or do a different color for, or something for kindergarten.
Okay. That sounds good.
So these, wait, just want to clarify, got confused. Are we saying that the column heading that says preschool, that we're saying that that's prior to preschool, not?
Prior to kindergarten.
We're saying that the one that's labeled preschool is prior to kindergarten. Got it. And so kindergarten is prior to first.
So they're all so preschool is end of preschool then?
Yes.
Okay, so
Then
then
how
how,
will be the
Marie, you
program?
update those.
then how do you get in?
I'm gonna be
To the left,
incredibly.
the highlighted
Oh,
ones.
Yeah.
You don't see them right now.
Can you scoot left 1 second to column B or whatever? So we can see what's before the preschool column,
Well, there's not skills before it.
Yeah.
Those are the areas.
right? But if you, this doesn't make sense to me. So if the preschool one, column C, counts to, whatever, I can't see, counts allowed to 10 or higher. If they can't count allowed to 10 or higher before they start preschool, they're in, when they're not supposed to count
We're
10
not.
at the end?
We're just saying oral counting.
Yeah, for the 4-year-old, we just identified the area.
Okay, I picked the back, I picked the back one.
B.
Yeah.
You're not, you're not driving, can you go to B, or who's that?
You just need to slide the bottom.
Aren't you controlling this?
No. I'm on the same Google Doc, but I'm not controlling what's being shared up there.
You
Think-
go-
yeah.
Yes.
So those are the 4 things that will be screened for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds to get into.
The green.
Yes, the green.
Got it.
So
Okay, so-
if you're weak in one of those green in column B, you can go into
eligible
preschool.
for.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe we just clean up the column headings, so that's.
And I know what it's for.
Which we wouldn't identify.
Yeah.
So the thing is that where that red font was that we just saw.
Yep. So for preschool, we have oral counting, 1-to-1, or 1-to-1 counting. Do we want to say 1-to-1 counting or 1-to-1 correspondence? I would say correspondence, which is just further down here. also.
Somebody remind me one more time, I'm not the math person, why we wouldn't just list all of them to give more options to get in?
Because that
I
also
just
is
want
the
to
intent.
understand. Okay.
I mean, the intent is to provide eligibility, like, if that was the intent, we'd have
Yeah.
universal pre-K.
Okay. So we're trying to
But
narrow
also-
it down to the priority standards ones.
But also some pretty big umbrellas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, just
If
asking.
we say oral counting, then
That
I
is
feel like
fair.
all those things fall underneath.
Okay.
that, So it just cleans up the document.
Got it.
But we're not saying they.
That's part of, because
Just saying-
counting subsets, we go under rural county.
Right.
Got it.
Uh,
So these skills are correlated to what the content standard.
Verbal
would
counting
execute.
number.
But that's, we're not going down for that, like, performance. Yeah.
It's like the equivalent of. All that kind of office.
But
You're
learning, okay, learn. So do we want to do the same for kinder? Or? Yeah. Oh, so go ahead. We're not gonna start back until.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I put on the agenda. Here's kind of like.
It does.
Okay, so are we on, where are we at? All
I
right,
think we're in column D, right?
Yes.
okay, so. these
Prior to
now-
kindergarten.
Prior to kindergarten, okay.
Okay, so prior to kindergarten.
It would stiff.
Oral county.
I think we'd absolutely still have more counting.
Yes. 1-to-1. 1-to-1.
Is it 1-to-1 counting or do you want 1-to-1 correspondence?
Correspondent.
Who would have thought those were 2 different things, guys? No wonder people are so confused by it. Okay. In 1st grade, are we yet worried about? No, because it's prior to kindergarten. Never mind, prior to kindergarten.
Right? Okay, number.
Quantity comparison again. You're looking at that quantity
I think
discrimination.
that should be very important on this challenge.
It is. We're not yet at addition and subtraction.
Do we have supervising
Are you
on
now?
prior to kindergarten? Or is that more kindergarten, be prior to first? Okay.
Number naming, I guess.
Okay, so now are we?
You're good. It's a big spreadsheet.
Okay.
Do we want to just keep the same 4 for prior to?
I think it's the same for.
And I think that's fine, you're just gonna be just at a different level. Which you-
Yeah.
I think that's
I think that
exactly
makes
like
a lot of-
literacy, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
We're close to it.
Does it mess you up if
I'm not looking up there at all. You're good. Yep. 1st grade gets to be orange. So if this is a standard, now we're prior to 1st grade.
And that's, okay. Call it oral county, yes. Is everyone good with that?
Yeah, prior to 1st, yeah.
I do the numeral identification, so,
Instead of number naming now.
yeah.
Yep.
Digitizing for sure, right? What about number comparison?
You have to be able to say it.
That's only the 6th time in my life I've heard that term.
We're gonna watch the video. Plan. Make sure you have it.
That word today.
Ties over saying.
You gotta learn, yeah, I do. You get involved in the meeting. We're gonna watch the video and you're gonna be like. It blew my mind. We're gonna watch it.
I feel like I learned something today.
What about,
prior, are we, what grade are we on?
We're still on prior to
Okay,
first.
so I don't feel like addition and subtraction is there yet, right? But that'll be next one.
It's totally fine.
Yeah, and like looking at the,
Yeah, I feel like that's
I
it.
feel like this number measure, what would you consider, isn't that number?
Subtract the 10.
Yeah, it's like looking to Rhode Island, they have like strategic counting, magnitude comparison, which we already have, super typing, which we have, number recognition, which we've kind of said was. Yeah. Cardinality. They have that as included. That's it. It could. Why not? It doesn't matter. Yeah, I think, and that looks nice with our standards, it's nice. One-to-one correspondence, they did check geometry for kindergarten. We could put anything in geometry.
Geometry was in all of them.
I'm trying to think of the like subset of tests that you do at the end of kindergarten. I can't think of any, like,
I don't know.
thinking Acadians in particular, you're doing missing number measure, quantity discrimination, number identification, and oral counting.
No, there isn't, that's the thing.
More about the characteristics.
It's more like above, below, right inside.
Yeah.
I'm okay leaving it off, I'm just saying what.
Yes, it's not a predictor of future math.
No, that's why it's not
Yeah.
optimal.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay leaving it off. So do we want, we've had one-to-one correspondence along the way. Do we want to continue that thread or does that transition to a more advanced skill?
This is before first, you're screening.
I don't think not yet.
Yeah.
You're gonna learn? No. I don't, we're quite ready for like. That is like, I always have one. Okay. Do we, so right now for prior to first, we have oral counting, cardinality, numeral identification, subitizing, quantity comparison. I'm thinking a good one.
I like it.
Okay, but not one-to-one person. So.
Yeah.
That'd be prior to second. If they still have that, that would be other indication of something going on.
And I think in screening, I think in this case, if you screening early for it would be
Yeah.
okay too, they would still.
I think it would still show up too in number counting. Those things. Okay,
Okay, so now are we to the next?
prior to second grade. Do we keep oral counting on there, you guys, with the 5s, 10s, and? I think it's more like number order and. So prior to
I feel
second,
like they should know how to count by the end of first grade.
yeah.
They absolutely.
Second grade, they're going into the adding and subtraction and actually the word, problem stories.
They're
on
starting to
it.
build their math fluency, right?
Yep, so like number order would count for skip counting.
Number order is vague enough, I like
Yeah.
that as an option.
Keep subitizing, yes.
I'm pretty sure number order isn't skip counting. Number order is, are you in your ones, tens, hundreds? It's where the location of your number is. Is at least when I test, that's where number order is. Like, is this in your ones column, your tens column?
It looks like oral counting is more skip counting.
Yeah. Oral counting would be what can you count by?
Myself.
Should we change it to skip counting then?
Okay. I mean, another broad term is just like number concepts.
Yeah, we could
operations.
call it counting skills. Not this progression.
Yeah, what are they? Counting skills.
Yeah.
Or we could say advanced counting.
They said strategic counting is how Rhode Island phrased it.
Do that.
Strategic.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
I like that.
That has an intent.
So I'm gonna put right here, a whole new one. Ooh. That's nice. Okay,
We have like adding and subtracting.
I think that's down here would be, is it?
Okay, we're just not very.
So on counting skills right now, we have strategic counting. And we could, do we want to specify that more on this document or does it matter?
I think you should, because if we're gonna share this with people,
Yeah,
I think we want it to be comprehensive.
so skip counting. Two, five,
Two, five,
ten.
Could you just
grab
keep
that.
oral counting,
Yeah.
the strategic counting?
That seems.
Is that all. Okay.
Yes. I'm gonna keep that there just because it's in order. with the
Yeah, that's
other
good, yeah.
ones, But copy. Yeah, okay.
It's a draft one. You're good.
Okay. Number naming.
I think that should be there.
Is that when we're looking at place value? So if you have 5,432, what's
But
the hundreds? Is
in-
that there?
But in first grade, do they just, let's go back to first grade. Do they have to name numbers to 100?
120.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
If it's 87, you would know that's 8.
It's,
What do you think about number name? Is that for at the end of first grade, prior to second?
And if you want them to have foundational numbers,
For sure.
that place
Yeah.
value is huge right
Yeah.
there. Okay. So we're saying you guys want to leave number naming? Yeah.
what about, so it looks like, okay, and this, so not a math person saying it out loud. Number identification incorporates writing. Or numeral identification, is that a foundational skill to later success in math if you can read and write?
Is it like a community code?
Because literacy.
I mean,
Yes,
honestly,
it is.
like I say this all the time, early numeracy skills are more predictive than early literacy skills of later reading rates. So-
Okay.
So yes, yeah.
You would say yes on that? So would it be more important to do number identification versus number naming and just make sure that it's broad enough where it could be reading / writing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So get rid of
Yeah,
number
because
naming.
it's finding like word problems and just, yeah,
Yeah.
out of context and
Okay.
context, other context clues, yeah.
That would match.
If you do the numeral identification and number order, then that would be this, your number order and your number naming are going to be,
Is it orders that, yeah.
would be very similar skill set.
Do number orders.
I like the
And
number.
the number order is very important at this point because now if we're going to be adding 12 and 12, they have to make sure they can line up their 10s groups and their 1s groups. So number order, very important, I would think by this point.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
What about quantity comparison?
And that way it aligns. I feel like that does the same thing. You can encompass everything in number order under quantity comparison.
So not that these descriptors are perfect, but if you look at number comparison, it says compares up to 3-digit numbers, and quantity uses comparison in multi-step problems. I'm not saying that that is a good description here. Almost like are you at set comparison? Did you get to that point, or is that too advanced? Or is it the same thing in a different?
Different contexts.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at groups of things, like
Yeah.
characteristics versus
Yeah.
just.
And like
kind of a random.
Set comparison is kind of measurement data vibes.
And at the end of first grade, it's the greater than, less than, equal to, that's the expectation. So, and that's what we would expect these prior to second grade kids to be able to do.
So number comparison or quantity comparison?
Can we do number / quantity comparison?
I think we should. Can you do both?
Yeah, I mean, really.
They're the same, right?
One's a number and one's a picture.
Well, think if you do,
Yeah,
but
pick one. If you're in a bigger number though, you're now looking at the number within the quantity too. So if you're looking at 542 compared to 895, which one has more than 10s place?
True.
Is that a
Right.
quantity or is that a number comparison? And is that the first grade? Probably number.
Okay.
Yeah. Wrap myself around that tree. Okay. End of first grade, I'm trying to think, so like Acadians, they're doing the composition, adding, subtracting, and they're also doing word problems.
Yeah, but I would say like we want to include that, like, formula addition and subtraction. right?
Yeah,
Formula
absolutely.
addition,
They should be
subtraction.
fluent within 20.
But I think
minutes.
there, I think
Can we call it
Like-
basic?
within 10,
Yeah. Within, within 10.
within 10, yeah, whole numbers.
So at the end of first grade,
They're
they're supposed to
within
be
20.
fluently solving within 20.
Yep.
So,
I don't think we want to put a number on it. Isn't
No.
that what the district would determine?
yes. So can we say basic or just leave it as addition, subtraction as the skill?
I think we just leave it as.
And then
addition,
their tool can
subtraction, then
determine
you
what that
can-
cutoff is.
100%, that's what we
Yeah.
should do.
And then.
We have cardinality. Oh yeah, counting.
I think that's good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sweet.
1, 2, 3.
We have to do before third.
We do have to
Yeah.
do before
I
third.
didn't have that, sorry.
Yeah, we don't have that one on here, but is that something that, that we could build maybe over lunch and do after lunch real quick? That's something we could do, okay.
I wanna get story problems in by that one, hopefully.
You get that.
I'd argue for it before.
Doug, you write that down.
Here's Sam.
He gave up his whole day.
Excuse
It's
me.
like, ask story problems.
Context.
Can I, my literacy self.
Put in the compass.
Yes, well, that's gonna be super productive.
What I'll do over lunch is I will update that rule with what we see here, and we'll have that ready to look at this afternoon when we go through the revised administrative rules too.
Cool. Okay, so lunch should be here.
He's probably wandering around the town center. I'll go.
I wanna go live.
Yes.
I gotta go last.
Not date.
And we'll come back at 1.
We just got
What do I?
Okay.
Now you all read
Compass. We'll play the video and
read it if I got it.
Go back.
Go on.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll be back at 1 o'clock. Bye, Melissa. We'll see you after lunch.